Welcome to this week's OK at Work with myself, Sarah Sawyer, my colleague, Russell Berger, both attorneys at Offit Kurman. And today we are talking about employees returning to work from a workers' compensation claim, being out of the office for some type of, work-related incident. I've seen a little bit of a trend with some of my clients, especially those who have a lot of in-person employees who might be doing physical labor jobs or might have high workers' compensation claims from carriers, directives from carriers trying to encourage the companies to have robust return to work on light duty policies. And we, just having to take a look at those issues. If an employer is looking to kind of have a more robust return to work on light duty policy, Russell, what are some things they might want to consider if that's something that's on their mind?
Yeah, I mean, the critical thing here is that you got to remember there's other laws that are implicated here, and it's only going to get more complicated as more state level laws get added. But at a high level, we're talking about the FMLA and the ADA, and we've talked about the interplay between those two laws before. But there may be issues where someone's still entitled to FMLA leave, even if they're cleared to return to work through the workers' comp process. Uh, and also, there may be a need for an accommodation, and that accommodation may not no longer be a short-term leave of absence, but it might be, certain conditions, certain work schedules, certain hours, certain, maybe it's remote work, maybe it's, breaks, maybe it's, equipment to help facilitate doing the job once they're back in the workplace. So, it really could be a number of things. And as I mentioned earlier, there are state laws that are implicated now too, that are analogous to the laws I mentioned. So you really want to be conscious from a formal process standpoint, to build in review of FMLA compliance, ADA compliance, and any, analog state or local law compliance.
Yeah, it's important that you don't want to just slop in something that maybe, and I've seen some carriers provide like a sample policy of returning to work on light duty or something to encourage these new policies. And if you've got a lot of policies already in place that are around those laws, or just kind of a way of handling things within your handbook, you don't want to just stick something in without integrating it properly, for sure, with other things that are going on. And I've also seen some of these sample policies around this be really broad and really be, encouraging of people to come back light duty without kind of considering some of these other factors, or considering whether someone can come back safely, or considering the business needs of the employer. So you also want to be able to reserve, just like you would, under other types of laws, you want to be able to reserve the ability to do an assessment of whether it's feasible for someone to come back on light duty under the circumstances. So for instance, if coming back on light duty means less hours in a week, that might be possible for some roles and not possible for others, or and definitely have to have a procedure in place to vet that, figure out what the employee needs, and figure out if that's possible, figure out how they can request this light duty, and request what they need, and have forms in place, those types of things. So it definitely takes some doing. It's not a bad thing to do, but you just want to make sure you do it in a way that makes sense for your business.
Yeah, and one kind of through line through all this to remain conscious of is what may be good for reducing the exposure on a workers' comp claim might not be good for reducing the exposure or the operational risk on the employment side. From a reducing a workers' comp claim means getting someone back to work, and getting someone back to work full time, so that you stop paying workers' comp. But getting someone back to work full time might not be a compliant thing from an FMLA or ADA perspective. It also might not be the best thing for the business or the worker, and you might need to ramp up. You might need to go part time for a while. There's all sorts of different things. So one of the things, cost benefits, that any employer will have to consider in this situation is, well, how does this affect the workers' comp, but also how does this affect the operation of my business and my employment law risk as well.
Yeah, definitely good points. And I think ultimately a good takeaway here is that this is just something to look into, regardless of whether you're getting, a push towards it from a carrier or not. It's just good to probably, if you've got someone or a type of business that's, you've got a lot of workers' comp claims or a lot of people going out for extended periods of time or things just based on the type of work that you do, it's good to have a plan in place to remind yourself of your obligations under the ADA, FMLA, and just kind of think through these things regardless of whether a carrier brings them to your attention.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're talking about the details, but the general idea of having a plan and having a policy and knowing what you're going to do generally for getting people back to work and reintegrating in the workforce after they've been out on a workers' comp leave is definitely a good idea and something that employers should have.
Well, thanks, Russell. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.